So here we go, session 1, part 2, neuroplasticity. Yes, your brain can change. So we're giving you some basic understandings of how and why the brain can change and some historical perspective. But we understand now we have a massive impact on our ability to control the direction our brain heads. Now there are always exceptions to the rule, and I will always say the exception is the rule. But we do have the ability to direct our brain even in the face of pathological conditions or disease states. There are certain factors that will cause rapid decline in certain brain functions, certain diseases, Alzheimer's being the one that most people are aware of, but many others as well. And even in cases like that, there are the ability, at least even in the short term, for people to help improve functions if all areas of brain and body health can be addressed. And that's why we're doing this series. Can't stress that enough. It needs to be a multi-system approach. We need to look at all these factors that we just finished up with in part 1 of this session 1 just a few moments ago. So we have the 4 pillars of brain health. This is important to understand. What we're going to be talking about through this webinar series are the physical, the cognitive, the metabolic, and lifestyle factors that impact brain function. So these 4 pillars are key, critical factors to understand if you want to push your brain in the right direction. So for example, we've talked about some people might be doing some exercise. So right there, they've got the physical category that they're working on. So if they're not doing anything else, they're only doing 1 out of 4 major things that they can do for their brain. Now they start doing some cognitive activities, some reading and problem solving and things like that. So now they're addressing 2, and then they go ahead and they change their diet and reduce their sugar intake and eat some better fats for their brain, things that we'll talk about. Now they're doing 3. And then the lifestyle factors. Maybe they start watching a little less TV and start quitting smoking or heading that direction, addressing that. Now it's the complete picture. Now this is something that can really take off and help push somebody in the right direction. And my 17 plus years in practice, I've seen it time and time and time again, where the more people address, the more likely they are to have positive outcomes, and often in many cases very rapid outcomes. So that's the 4 pillars of brain health. So what can you do? There's a lot that can be done. And I have listed out here a bunch of things that we can talk about in great detail. Any one of these areas we can go into an hour or 2 or 3, but we're going to really just skim the surface in this application aspect of this neuroplasticity session of this webinar. So number 1 is brain healthy diet. Now that is a vast, vast topic. But in general, we understand this day and age, number 1, that people are eating way too much sugar. They're generally not eating enough natural foods or whole foods. So they're not eating a lot of fruits and vegetables and things like that. They're eating a lot of processed foods. And we also, too, know that people are not getting enough good fat in their diet. Now, there's always, again, the exception to the rule, but we're talking about the standard American diet, the average American diet, where people are, again, getting too much sugar, not enough good fat, and not enough whole foods. So a brain healthy diet would be exactly that, limiting sugar, because we know diabetes is such a big problem. It's epidemic in this country. There are so many people, if you look at the statistics, nearly 2/3 of our population in certain cases, in certain ages, is in a pre-diabetic or diabetic state. And we'll talk about the relationship between blood sugar in the brain in an upcoming episode. But really the understanding of blood sugar in the brain is such that we know that in many cases the cognitive decline people are experiencing is directly related to the problems with blood sugar in their body, in their brain. Type 3 diabetes is a term that's being utilized to describe the problems with blood sugar handling that happen in the brain of people with Alzheimer's and other types of dementia. So they essentially have diabetes in the brain. So that's really important. Brain healthy diets are super, super important. We can't really put a level of priority on any one of these because it's different for everybody. If somebody comes into us and they have diabetes, that's really the first thing we need to look at and address, because any type of brain training or intervention will not simply work if they're having problems with the most basic of fuel delivery needs. We talked about oxygen and sugar being important for the brain. So if the brain is having a problem getting the sugar it needs because of diabetes or prediabetes, then it simply won't be able to attend to other activities. So number 2, physical and cognitive exercise. Everybody understands generally the need for physical exercise, and there's different reasons that people do exercise, but exercise impacts the brain. Exercise, as we'll learn in the future, has a lot to do with producing certain chemicals that are very good for neuroplasticity. Nerve cells will connect better when you exercise. There's a chemical called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and that has been called miracle grow for the brain. So the more you exercise, the more of this you produce, and the more you have nerve cells joining up with one another to form nice, strong pathways that will serve you well throughout your life. So really important there. Cognitive exercise. We know people that are academically active have lower incidence of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So this is really important. Every year of schooling decreases your risk of cognitive impairment. This is really important to really take to heart, because there are a lot of folks that feel they're just too old to learn, or whatever the excuse might be, or what's holding them back. But you're never too old to learn. We need to take this understanding and really just implement it at any stage of life. So we want to continually learn new skills. My grandfather was the perfect example of this. He was the type that would learn every 2 or 3 years, would learn a new skill that would really help to propel his brain function, and kept him sharp as a tack until he passed at about 93 years old. And his passing was due to unfortunate circumstances, hospital related, due to an accident that he had. But he very well could have lived, I'm sure, into his hundreds. And again, sharp as he was, because he was doing things throughout his life, constantly studying, learning how to, do all these different things in addition to his veterinary practice. He could work on cars, he could do music, he was a photographer, he was a cook, all of these different things. So continually learning new skills will insulate our brains, create more connections per nerve cell, and will cause us to decrease the risk of dementia and possibly even Alzheimer's. Reducing stress. Stress is a big deal in our lives these days. There's a lot of reasons for stress, job-related, family-related, technology-related, sleep-related. There's all reasons for stress, and the bottom line is certain parts of the brain, like the hippocampus that we talked about, that has to do with learning, they don't work very well. Their function is impaired when they're exposed to stress hormones like cortisol on a consistent basis. So the more stress we have, the less ability we have to learn, and our brains will be impaired as a result. Most people realize that when they're under stress, they simply don't think well. So when we have sustained stress, it leaves a lasting impact on our brain and an inability to function appropriately, and the more it lasts, the more hardwired that stress becomes. Improving sleep hygiene. This is a massive category as well, and we will talk about what we call an optimization tip coming up in a moment about sleep hygiene, so I'm not going to talk about that too much right now. But people, because of technology, because of stress, because of other things, are just simply not sleeping well these days. So we have to address this one factor, because many things happen when we sleep, including what we call consolidation of memories. So memories and learning are formed when we sleep. So if we learn something during the day, those pathways become wired when we sleep. Also, too, our brains essentially take out the trash when we sleep. There's a process called glymphatic drainage, or glymphatic clearance, and what that is basically junk being taken out of your brain while you sleep, and it's being looked at as if this only happens when we sleep. So if not, we get these buildups and deposits that start resembling things like Alzheimer's and certain aspects of Parkinson's disease, because our brains are not clearing out the garbage. The next one, getting assessed for brain or hemispheric imbalance. This obviously requires somebody with knowledge related to functional brain capacities. So this is what we would call the functional neurologist. Folks with board certifications like myself, we look at the brain as an entity that changes over time, and there are certain things that could happen to an individual that can cause different parts of the brain to work differently. So we need to look at imbalances in brain function. Is the left brain talking to the right brain? Is the front part of the brain talking to the back of the brain? All of these different things, and there's many testing procedures and diagnostic tests that can be done to show if in fact the brain is communicating effectively with itself and with the external environment as well. Social integration, this is important. This is a known fact that the more isolated we become, the faster our brains break down. So we need to be socially integrated. And when most people start losing their memory or having challenges, they want to be around people less and less, which continues to kind of propel or perpetuate that process. So we need to be socially connected with one another, and that is something we'll talk about as time goes on. We need to clean up our environments and improve negative social habits. So if people are drinking and smoking and doing different things that will impact their brain in a negative way, they need to start thinking about dropping these habits and allowing for their brain to have the optimum ability to improve itself. And finally, we have addressing injuries and conditions early and appropriately. So that could be diabetes. If somebody has diabetes and it's not controlled, that needs to be done before the brain can be positively impacted in the way that people are looking for. Injuries as well. If somebody has a chronic injury, it will be changing the brain, because if it's chronic pain, the brain gets used to this constant bombardment of pain signals, and it changes its structure and function over time because of that. There are other things too, that if somebody has a limb that's not working so well anymore because of degenerative disease or something like that, it's not feeding the brain the proper amount of information that it normally does, and that part of the brain will start to dysfunction or malfunction as a result of that. And we see that with amputees as well as people with significant injuries to their limbs. So we're going to go ahead and just understand, as we keep talking about here, and this is something you're going to hear a common theme throughout this entire program, is that your brain can change. So you need to use it or lose it. I put that in because, you know, most people are aware of that, but there's still many folks that get caught up in their old habits, and we've got to get that brain on the treadmill, so to speak, and start using it, because if not, its function will be declining. So we need to push it in the right direction. So here we go with our optimization actions. So these are things we're going to give you at the end of every session, and basically what we're looking at are things that you can implement into your life right away that are going to help to start to make some changes. And being that this is a basics of building a better brain course, we're going to start with some real simple things, but things that can be highly impactful. You know, I've heard, based on podcasts that I do and classes that I do, implementation of simple breathing exercises or certain tips that we'll talk about had a significant impact on people's lives. So nothing is really too big or too small to do, but we're going to start with basics and then progress to more advanced functions or applications over time. So number one, never stop learning. That's why you're here. So you want to educate yourself on your greatest asset every chance you get, starting with this workshop. That's why we're doing what we're doing here. You need to become educated on your brain if you want to push it in the right direction. Of course, you can take a whole bunch of tips and put them into action, but if you have an understanding, there will be a greater motivation for pushing your brain forward, and the outcomes will be much greater as a result of that. We see that time and time again. When people are invested in the process, when they're learning about their brain as they're trying to fix it or move it forward, they simply do better than others that want somebody to show them what to do. So you want to educate yourself every chance you get. We're going to have a reading list that I will put in the members only section, so keep an eye out for that. That will be coming up in the next few weeks, and there'll be a lot of great books and references and resources that you can look at, but we'll be talking about those as we go through the program as well. Number two, a 1 to 2 breathing exercise. So that little dot right there in between the 1 and 2, that's a ratio. So a 1 to 2 ratio breathing exercise. What does that mean? Very simply, for every second you breathe in, you're going to breathe out for 2. For purposes of this exercise, we breathe in through the nose, and then we breathe out through the mouth. So if it's 4 seconds in, it'll be 8 seconds out. And you want to do this in a nice, comfortable place. You can start doing it on your back so you can feel the stomach moving first, which means your diaphragm is being used, and then your chest actually moves last. So you want to breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. Make sure your stomach fills up first, and then your chest fills up last. And then you just breathe out in the opposite manner. So you breathe in, and then you breathe out twice as long. That's the key with this exercise. That will help your oxygen levels go up. We talked about oxygen and sugar being most important for your brain. So this will help boost your oxygen saturation or your oxygen levels, and your brain will simply work better. If you're getting lightheaded while doing this activity, just make sure you make sure you don't do as many, but you can do 3 sets of 10 throughout the course of the day, and these will really serve you well in terms of boosting your brain function. But if you're getting dizzy, drop it down to maybe 5 repetitions or so. That will happen with people in the beginning. They will get dizzy because the brain is not used to getting that much fuel. Number 3, sleep. We talked about technology being a challenge with people. So we have iPads, iPhones, TVs, computers, laptops. All these things are in the bedroom, and they're causing people to not sleep. So many people now use their phones as a means of waking them up, which means they're getting notifications and all of these other things as they're sleeping. I personally shut off all the notifications on my phone anytime, but the last place I need them is when I'm trying to sleep. Now, there are certain people with emergency situations, and they have loved ones that they're concerned about and might get calls on in the middle of the night, but that's a very small portion of the population. Most people should leave these things on the counter in the kitchen or the living room or the den and not have any of that in the room. An alarm clock is all you need, and hopefully something with a low light, because as we see, light will impact sleep as well. TVs need to be out of the bedroom as well. I know a lot of folks fight and resist on these recommendations, but it's imperative. If you want to sleep, you need to get everything that is counteracting your ability to maintain or obtain quality sleep. You need to get it out of there. So real simple, remove technology from the bedroom, tablets, phones, computers, TVs, get them all out of there, and you will adapt to it very quickly, and you will be very impressed on how much better you sleep as a result of that. So real simple things here. This is the initial actions that we're looking at to take to help push our brain in the right direction. We will be adding significantly to this list as time goes on. But it's been an absolute pleasure to be with you this first session, and I'm going to go ahead right to the topic for next week. So next week we're looking at biomarkers of memory. So these are clues from your body that tell us about your brain. So this is something you have to look forward to. We're going to see all these different things that can tell us what's going on in the objective sense. What can we look at that will tell us if your memory is in fact slipping, or if there are indications that it might at some point in time. So this is really important because most of these things are well within your control, and again, information we need to know if we want to move our brains forward in the positive direction. So it's been an absolute pleasure to be with you for this session, and I look forward to seeing you for the next session on biomarkers of memory. Thank you.